Okay, welcome everyone to our Saturday stream here on the Kev Baker Show live on YouTube. And as you can see from the front screen here, we have got some real woo to get into today. And what a lineup we've got. We've got the three amigos. That's right, I have got Joe Joseph and Charlie Robinson here as well. So, gents, how you doing? And Joe, come to you first. We've got a special guest this week, although can we call him a guest when he's a friend?
Yeah, I know. That's not really a guess, Kev.
Well, how you doing, man? You looking forward to some deep woo, Joe?
I am indeed.
And maybe we'll be able to prize some of your majestic secrets out of you tonight. You know, since you're like an ex-military insider.
Oh no.
Yeah, we should have blurred your face out for that one, dude. You could have given us like some top secret intel later on in the show.
I could do that.
Your time at Groom Lake and things like that. Not grooming by the lake, but just Groom Lake.
Grooming by the lake. Yes, that's right.
Yeah, exactly, dude. So on that note, let's go to our main man, Charlie Robinson. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
It's great to have you on the live stream, dude.
I'm excited. Let's get into some weirdness, shall as if we don't always get into weirdness.
Well, deep woo, and this is almost like us revisiting some deep woo because we've done a lot of shows together. And I'm hoping that as time goes on in this show, you're going to share your not your personal story relating to Area 51, but a story. And it really is one of the best stories I've heard, you know, a personal anecdote about the place. But before we get there, I mean, if people want to support the stream and you don't have to, there's various ways you can do that. You can fire up the super chat and then your comment, your message will get read on screen. You can join the memberships, and what you get if you're a member is you unlock all the cool emojis. You've got Scottish Shrek, you've got Elon Musk smoking, you've got my darling AOC, the brightest political mind in the entire world, and a whole lot more other emojis as well. But none like Joe's got flying about on his camera tonight. If people haven't guessed, Joe's got a new toy, and it's called Emojis on his camera.
So, right.
So yeah, if you want to support the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. It goes a long, long way to helping me continue what you see here. Never going to be able to solve all the mysteries of the world. Never going to break any international news for you. But what we will do is we'll give you the very best of woo and information. And then you take that information and you do with it as you please. You can dismiss it. You can take it on board. You can ridicule it. You can laugh at it. Do what you like. We provide... You decide. And tonight we're getting into deep woo. And I think this show was really inspired last week when Bob Lazar was on with Joe Rogan, guys. Now, Bob Lazar's a controversial character that came out back in 1989 with an utterly fantastic story. Now, he claimed that after working at Los Alamos Labs, he was approached after sending out his resume to several companies. But he was approached by certain employers and ended up at somewhere called S4. Now, S4 is like an installation which is part of the Area 51 complex. Now, what Bob Lazar went on to share with George Knapp on Las Vegas kind of news, it went worldwide. And 30 years later, Bob Lazar's story is still highly controversial. But for us guys here anyway, we're going to take a look at it tonight. We're going to take a look at other Area 51 woo, the facts, the fiction, the speculation, and we'll try to get closer to what's going on at Groom Lake or possibly other locations, other secret sites out there that we haven't heard of. So first off the bat, let me come to you, Charlie boy, because Bob Lazar, here's a controversial character, and he was prized back onto the kind of public arena on the Joe Rogan show. Now, your honest take on Bob Lazar. I don't know how long you've been following the story, but talk to us about your take on it and what's going on at Area 51, according to Bob.
Well, my gut feeling is that he's telling the truth. I'm not a human lie detector, of course. I didn't work for the FBI. I don't know. I can't assess it. I don't have all the information, but my feeling about Bob Lazar is similar to my feeling about Gary McKinnon, which is that he's had a story for a long, long time. It hasn't changed. He's told it multiple times, front to back, back to front. It's still the same story. And he hasn't gone, he hasn't tried to monetize that. He hasn't tried to turn it into the blue chicken cult. He hasn't added on more and more. He's not trying to sell Bob Lazar t-shirts or stickers or anything like that. He's just a guy telling a story. And frankly, he seems to have come to the point where he's told the story so much he's probably sick of it. It definitely changed his life. I think he might even say to some extent ruined his life by coming forward with it. There is almost no upside to him except to the best case scenario for Bob Lazar is that people believe what he's saying and think that he's probably telling the truth, which is like a baseline interpretation of anybody you meet at the grocery store. You would think, well, I probably believe them and I think they're telling the truth. So that's under the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, people think he's out of his mind, and that he's lying about things, that he's faked his employment, that he's fake talking about aliens. As far as I recall, he never mentioned anything about aliens. He just talked about spaceships that were reverse engineered. So there's been nothing but downside to him. Obviously, it ended his career to some extent, or career with the government. So there's lots of downside, almost no upside. And he came on Joe Rogan, as he said, and then I heard in follow-up sort of interviews with Joe Rogan was doing with like Andrew Santino, where they were talking about it, just saying, I got, Joe's take was that he got the feeling that he was telling the truth, that there was nothing about his story that seemed that he seemed to contradict, and that it was that frankly that it seemed like he came back on to Joe Rogan's one last time to sort of set the record straight. And it's actually a perfect venue because of the format, where you can just talk for 2 hours straight without commercial interruptions, without, a producer with a headphone saying, cut him off. Like, we can't have this, go to, change the subject or anything. It actually was the perfect venue for him to talk about that. And not to mention, Joe is more welcoming to things like that. And I think his audience is too. So the right scenario for it, the right guy to conduct the interview, someone like Joe Rogan, that's like, you can take it as seriously, or you can be dismissive about it if you'd like. But my overall feeling about him,
McKinnon were legit, and they suffered for it. Good show, lads.
Woo woo. I think Lazar and McKinnon were legit, and they suffered for it. Good show, lads. I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. And Joe, I mean, Bob Lazar came back into the kind of public eye earlier on this year. Might be in the tail end of last year, when he was approached to do this documentary here. Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers. Now, I watched this today, and as you know, in recent times, Joe, I've kind of found myself, not purposely, but I've almost become a bit of a debunker. And, I like to give my sniff test to kind of information and whistleblowers that come forward.
It's weird how you don't start off that way, but you always end up going down that debunky road. You know what I mean? It's like,
well, the thing is, when it comes to Lazar, I can't find the telltale signs that would normally stand out.
Yeah, that's why I tend to err more on the side of it's true than it's not.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's been one story. He stuck to that story, and even when the trend from that story died down and he got lots of grief, there was no, but I remember something new now, to get that kind of attention back. Bob Lazar does not want attention.
No, that's to me what's very telling about it.
Yeah,
is that he's not looking for it, No, the ones that are, they're more charlatan type.
And why lie? I mean, why lie, Joe? I mean,
there's no incentive because he doesn't want the attention. So why?
No, exactly. And I mean, people will say, well, he must have got paid for this movie here. Well, even if he did, that's 30 years later. I mean, was he playing this long game for a Netflix documentary that he never knew would happen? I don't think so. Was he putting his family through this just for the hell of it? I don't think so. And the reason he came forward, he's not even into UFOs. He's not the kind of guy that would be into this kind of stuff. He's a scientist. He's a geek. And what he says is, his real message he wants to get across to people is the fact that This is a suppression of technology that doesn't come from this world. And there's also evidence that this comes from aliens, extraterrestrials that are far more superiorly scientifically advanced than anything we have down here on Earth, guys. Anything. We don't have anything like this. He was talking about what he called an anti-gravity generator. Now, I'm not a big gravity guy, but when you listen to him talking about the science of this thing, and bear in mind, he was talking about an element called element 115, element 115, which at the time didn't exist. This was something that wasn't out there. And yet in recent years, Russian scientists finally managed to make a stable version of this and confirmed that this was a thing. So, I mean, that's one thing that over the years we've got various pieces of confirmation that what Lazar was telling us may well have been true. Now, you've also got to keep your mind open, Charlie, to the fact that there may have been a bit of disinfo fed to him as well, you know, with the briefings he read, everything else, because that way, even Bob said it when he was reading it the first time, he wondered if they were setting him up, you know, telling him about Zeta Reticuli, because then if that appeared in the media, then he would know that it came from Bob and they could single him out. But I think what he sticks, the science that he sticks to, and this generator and the propulsion system and the fuel source, remember, everything's compartmentalized, folks. He worked on that one specific thing. I really struggle to pull his story apart.
Yeah, if you remember, he also mentioned not just element 115, but also gravity waves, as opposed to just gravity itself. So he was talking about that 30 years ago when everyone was like, gravity waves, I don't understand that. And he did a pretty good, gave an explanation to Joe Rogan, about how it worked with regard to enveloping the ship and how they were using radio frequent, they were just using regular handheld walkie-talkies, and he was wondering how that was working, because the way the ship was repelling gravity, it should have repelled those transmissions as well. So he was consistent on that years in advance, talking about something that hadn't been invented in terms of element 115. He was consistent about talking about gravity waves, which meant nothing to anybody in 1989, but now make a little bit more sense. And he, during the course of the interview with Joe Rogan, he was also on multiple occasions, when asked about something, his answer was, I don't know. Now, that's something you don't hear from Corey Good and those guys. Those guys always have an answer. Hey, what happened about this, the 20 and back, and how? Oh, well, this is how it happened. Bob Lazar was very upfront. When asked a question about how this technology worked, or what that meant, or what it meant in this file that he read about Zeta Reticuli, his answer oftentimes was, I don't know. I don't know. And it could have been, and it could have been disinformation. And I know that they put fake tidbits in there to see if you talk about it. And then if you talk about that specific, like he used as an example, the Zeta Reticuli thing, that it was in a briefing that he read, right? And then if he knew, maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. But if it was intentional disinformation, the way they would track that to know that Bob Lazar was not trustworthy would be that if they started hearing out in the public Zeta Reticuli in a specific term that was in that briefing, then they would know that Bob was the one that leaked it. They probably had a dozen briefings. One said Zeta Reticuli, the next one said Alpha Centauri, the next one said some other star, and use that as a way to weed out. I mean, that's an old CIA, FBI trick to see who. It's actually a police trick too, to see who the leakers are. They set up different storylines and see who repeats that storyline, and then you can tell who is the leaker from that.
I've done it in real life, dude. When you know somebody's talking behind your back, I've done it. You tell people certain things, and something gets back to you, and you
see which one it is. Yeah.
Then you know exactly who you can trust. So. I mean, we've got a new member in the house. New member coming. Come on, folks, we need more members. And that will take us closer to new emojis. I'm thinking Bob Lazar or an alien might be the next one. Here we go. New member, Gradient Ledge. I like that. Cool name. But this drawing here, this turns up in the Netflix documentary. And this is a representation of the craft that Bob was allowed into. Now, the reason they allowed him into the craft, and he said that there was 9 different craft that he seen one day when the hangar doors were all left open. And what was really interesting to me was the fact that they said that this stuff was really old, as in one of them at least was dug up in an archaeological dig. Now, that is utterly fascinating. It ties in with a lot of the ancient reports as well of UFOs, flying discs, flying objects in the sky.
Well,
But if you look at this here, Joe, I mean, if you look at this here, he was allowed access to this one layer here in the middle, and then he was allowed to look down a hatch at these things here. Now, in the middle here, you've got the reactor, the anti-gravity element 115 reactor, and then it goes down to these 3, it's almost like gravitational directors, and they can spin 360, they can go all different directions, and that's what's used for your propulsion. Now, this love heart that you're seeing around it, we talk about torsion, Joe. Now, this is basically like the torsion field that goes around this thing. And,
cool. So much like the Marco Rodin toroid stuff.
You see this line coming up from the middle with the reactor. He called that a waveguide. And he said that's why you get the kind of love heart shape, because it kind of splits at the top. And even when this field is operating, it bends light because of this element 115.
Because it creates almost a singularity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing with the toroid. It's so, that torsion field is so strong that in the center of it, it's what they call a singularity.
And that's what he was saying, you know, here's a device that was literally producing gravitational waves, and yet us humans, as advanced as we are, we really can't even describe what gravity truly is, let alone reproduce it with a reactor, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. But you wonder, though, like, human beings have used anti-grav technology in the past, especially with the Nazis and the Foo Fighters, and the Nazi Bell. You know, so there was some, you know, with the counter-rotating Mercury, there was evidence of that being anti-grav. But this here, you know, and this is what kind of reminds me of the stories of the fallen ones, Kev, especially if they had craft that were significantly old. You know, here you have the Watchers that fell to Earth, right? What better way to fall to Earth than in your flying saucer? Come on down.
And remember when that was all written, I mean, was there even the language to describe something like flying down from space, from another like dimension? They didn't know what dimensions and space was.
It's like a blind man describing the color red when they've never seen it before. You know, you can't. There's just no way to describe it. So they do the best they can with the limited knowledge that they have at the time. That's why, you know, like you hear pillars of fire and things like that. But
flaming chariots.
Yeah. You know, it's what people then describe. We always describe things based on our life experience, you know? And so this just to me confirms everything else we talk about, Kev. It's just more evidence to the affirmative.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm quite open to the fact that the backstory that Lazar and others were given as to the origin of these crafts, that could be utter bunkum. There's a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know that, but we'll tell you it's from space. It's tech you're not going to recognize anyway. So I'm quite open to the fact this could have been from Nazi Bell technology. Maybe they got it from something earlier as well, and paperclip transfer of information. Totally open to it. Now, I'll come back to you then, Charlie, because why is it then? Why is Bob Lazar still alive, dude? Because, I mean, come on. Let's not be naive here. I mean, we've seen whistleblowers in the past coming out, and we've seen how they've been treated. You know, Edward Snowden, he escaped with his life, but he's living in a Siberian hellhole. You know, look at Chelsea Manning. What happens to her when she releases not even near majestic level clearance stuff? So why is he still walking?
Well, because he when you're going to disclose something like this, you either make a ton of noise and make yourself the top story in the news as best you can, like Snowden did, like Chelsea Manning did, and people like this, like Bob Lazar did. He was the lead story for a while there, you know, in the late in '89. You do that because it allows you a certain, once you get a high enough profile, it actually gives you a sense of protection, a little bit of protection. It might be a false sense of protection. They could always make you meet with an accident. But
oh yes, don't get in a single engine airplane or anything.
You definitely don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to
and
have
Lazar
dinner
is
with the Bushes.
Lazar's
or
the type of
Clintons.
guy that could build himself a single engine aircraft. I mean, that's how he came to the attention of Area 51 folks. I mean, this was a guy who was literally building particle accelerators in his master bedroom, and then on the weekends he was pimping out his motorbike and putting jet engines in it. Literally a jet-powered motorbike. So he was all over the papers when he was at Los Alamos, and then he left there, put his resume out to people that he had met when he was working at Los Alamos, and he got invited for an interview at somewhere called EE&G. Now, EE&G is really interesting, especially recently in ufology circles, because there was something called the Admiral Wilson document that has just come out. Now, this pertains to a conversation that took place outside, you guessed it, EE&G buildings. And what the conversation was to do with was this Joint Chief. He was the head of the intel community, Admiral Wilson. He was speaking to a scientist called Eric Davis. And basically, he was explaining to Davis that he was trying to get access to a program that is very similar to what Bob Lazar is talking about. It was a special access program, and he was pissed. I mean, here he is, one of the Joint Chiefs, one of the highest-ranking naval officers in America, and he's finding out about a special access program that he doesn't have access to. So he finally gets a meeting with these people, and it's a military-industrial complex company that he wouldn't name, and basically he was told in no uncertain terms, there's a need-to-know basis, and you don't need to know. And why that's important is because this is an access program that's supposed to be being run by the government, but there's no government oversight in there. And the reason I bring the Admiral Wilson document into this conversation is because it seems to line up so brilliantly with a lot of the information that Bob Lazar has been talking about. And it sounds like he was working on this very same type of special access program that was compartmentalized, that people high up in the government, up to the president, don't even know about. And it's the military-industrial complex that are working on all this stuff. And Lazar said the American people have got a right to know. And I think the people of the world have a right to know.
I agree. And I would also like to add that I think that they did, in a sense, try to assassinate Bob Lazar. They assassinated his character by claiming that he didn't work at Los Alamos, that he didn't go to MIT, and they went out of their way to try and make him look stupid and make him look like he was a pathological liar. So they did. There was part of that. Yeah, I think that it's interesting to realize that we get we turn on TV, we get bogged down with the president said this and Congress did this and, approval for this and that. But, that's just kind of theater. And the real power brokers have access to these special access programs that that nobody else has, not even the president. Exactly. And they laugh at the idea that the president somehow needs to know about this, because what they realize is that A, the president's compromised, B, the president is temporary, and C, the president doesn't pull the strings, doesn't approve their funding for this. They're getting their funding by some other method. Now that might be the 21 plus trillion that Catherine Austin Fitts and Mark Skidmore have determined have been sliding out the back door of HUD and the DoD, probably coming from that. It might be that they're self-financing. You have to remember Senator Inouye had a statement talking about they have their own Air Force, they have their own military, they have their own funding mechanisms. So
the front companies. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
They have taken lots of money, and they have either started front companies that are legitimate, or they have used them to obfuscate what they're doing. but they have a network of legitimate companies that are operating, that are generating revenue. It's just coming to them too. So there's a lot of sneakiness. If we think we're going to turn on our nightly news and get the full story, or have Bob Knapp report it and get to, or George Knapp get to the
Bob Knapp sound better, man. Bob Knapp, that's a cool name. That sounds like a showbiz name. Bob Knapp. No, definitely. No, I agree with you.
It's just not good. We're not going to hear about it. So these things go underground. You dig it up, you look crazy.
Look what's happening right now. We've got Luis Elizondo, the darling of the ATIP program, the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program. Only problem is the Pentagon deny that he was ever a part of that program. Now, yes, he is a counter intel officer, so you can make of that what you will. He's never been asked what he's working on now. And I think what we're watching just now with this whole UFO rollout, and the Mockingbird media are doing their part in this as well, because they work for the same CIA who are using these front companies as a cover for all of these big black budget ops that are going on. And although some of the information we're being told right now is true, we have to be very, very wary indeed, because this is coming from the same people who have been determined to cover this up for so long. So why now? Why are they coming out with this now? I think personally it's for more money come the NDAA. They're going to look for more budget to protect us from this threat, this unknown threat in the sky. But there's probably more going on besides that. However, before I forget, I need to get Charlie now to share not Bob Lazar's story, but somebody else's story of Area 51, because this here...
Oh, yeah.
And it ties in. This was way before me and Charlie ever started talking about Bob Lazar. It was early on when we were doing shows. Take it away, Charlie, because this is fascinating, man.
So it's a story that happened to somebody that I know. So it wasn't me. It's not firsthand. You can sort of discount it as much as you'd like. It doesn't matter to me. I won't be offended.
Yes,
but
you will.
It was either 95 or 96. Met a photographer in Southern California, and I had to go to his studio, and then I had to go back to his studio a couple of weeks later and pick up the final pictures. So when I was at his studio the first time, he was telling me, and just to kind of give you a description of the guy, this was 95 or 96. He was probably in his late 50s, maybe, had long gray hair, kind of looked like Jimmy Jeans, kind of had that vibe to him. He looked like maybe he'd been to the Grateful Dead a couple 100 times. But he was a legit photographer, had his own studio, and we were just talking about nothing. And he said, "Oh, I got this crazy phone call from a guy who said, I am Colonel so-and-so from the Air Force. Any record of this phone call will not exist on your phone log." That's how the first phone call started. He was like, okay, what? Can I help you? And the guy said, "We have we'd like to hire you for a project. Come out to a facility of ours and shoot some pictures for us. And would you be interested in going?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course I'd be interested in going." And so I said to him, not to, no offense, but doesn't the Air Force have photographers? Why do they need you? He's like, "I don't know. I was thinking the same thing. It seems like, I'm a good photographer, but am I the best photographer in the world? I don't know." So, but he said, "Hey, screw it. They're hiring me. It sounds interesting. I'll go." And I was like, "Well, have fun." And I didn't know where he was going, and he didn't know where he was going. He just knew he was going somewhere. But the way he told the story, it made it sound like he was going someplace really interesting. So about 2 weeks goes by, and I'm thinking it's about time for me to go back to his studio to grab these photographs that he had for mine, not anything having to do with his work with the Air Force. And I called him and I said, "Hey, do you have are those pictures ready? Can I come grab them?" And he said, "Oh yeah, come on anytime. If you want to come today, that's fine." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll come in a couple hours. Is that all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's great." And I said, "Oh, by the way, how'd that thing go with the Air Force?" He goes, "I can't talk about it." And he clicked and hung up on me. And I was like, "Okay." So I got down there, couple hours later, and when I got there, I was greeted by his wife, and I said, "Hey, I'm here to get the picture." She's like, "Oh yeah, no problem." And I said, "What's up with him?" I called and like asked him about his experience, and he like hung up on me. She said, "He's all freaked out." And I was like, "Well, why?" She says, "He's totally convinced that they are listening to his phone conversations." I go, "Well, they probably are." She goes, "Yeah, I know, they probably are." But
Right.
and so I see him in there, and I'm like, what is going on with you? You know, I had a fairly fun relationship with the guy where I could say like, "What is your problem?" You know? And he said, "We got to go outside. I can't talk about it in here." He was freaked out to talk about it in his own studio. So we went outside, and he told me the story. Now people can believe this, they can discount it, they can do whatever they want with it. He said, "I went there." And he said, they took me to Area 51. Have you heard of that? And I was like, I've heard of it. And I said, "Well, what was the scenario?" And he said, "I had a guard with me at all times, and I would have my camera, and I would shoot pictures. And then when I was done with the roll of film," so this gives you an idea of the time before digital, 95, 96. "When I was done with the roll of film, I would have to hand the camera to the guard that was with me. The guard would then open the camera, take the roll of film out, load a new roll of film in, close it, hand the camera back to me." So he said, at no time did I ever have the actual film in my hand. I just would take pictures and hand it off to him. And he said that they were in a hangar, an airplane hangar, that he said was the biggest airplane hangar he had ever seen in his life or had ever imagined in his life. He said it was just massive, and it was opened up, and they had something there that he said he described it as being about the size of a Volkswagen Bug and kind of roundish. And then he went on to describe
hold on. We've got a super chat. If it reads it. Oh, it's not going to read it because it's thought it had a sweary word in it. That's why it blanked one of the words out. So what it says is, "It's just a guy. We must realize how much all this is beta tests, propaganda, and psyops, using intel assets in the media and corporations to push the programming." And I get that, but again, I can't see how Bob Lazar's been used in that way, because he was never really the darling of the mainstream media. And I would think, for somebody, if they're being used in that way, and I get anyone can be used in that way, but I honestly think there would have been more, he'd have been pushed into the public even more and constantly over the years, as opposed to wanting to fade away. But again, I'm open to anything when it comes to this whole story on Lazar. But back to your story here, the guy's taking the film,
Yeah.
He's taking the pictures, he's handing them off to his handler, the guard that's there.
Mm-hmm.
What happens then, dude?
So they find this, there's this big, the thing that he was supposed to take pictures of, there's this big thing that they called the acorn, right? And he described it as being the size of a Volkswagen Bug. Then he said, "Have you ever been to the carnival where they have those 3 circles where it's a big metal, almost like it's a one-person ride. You step up into it, you kind of grab in here, spread your legs like you're going through the place at TSA, and the circle starts to fall over, and then the other circle starts to spin this way, and the other circle spins that way." I knew what he was talking about, but if you can't imagine it, if you think about the movie Contact, it's a lot like that, where that thing just started spinning faster and faster. This was before that movie Contact came out, but so he's explaining it like that, and I said, yeah, I understand what he said. So they moved it out so that it was out of the hangar and out onto a tarmac, so it was uncovered now. It was able to go somewhere. And he said there was a guy that was operating it that was on like a scissor lift, right? Like one of those things, and it had like remote control. So this guy was in charge of controlling it, and it wasn't meant to be alien or anything. I mean, there's no implication of that. It just was something that I had never heard of, and he had never heard of. So they put it out onto the tarmac, and they start the process of turning those little, whatever it is, for lack of a better term, an engine that makes the circles start to go faster and faster and faster. And then there's a bit of a locking mechanism on it that keeps it in place when you're moving it from point A to point B. They took the locking mechanism off, so it was not necessarily being held up anymore. It was just spinning faster and faster and faster. it lifted off of this contraption that they'd had it held in, and it started to go up into the air, and he's, taking pictures, and he's trying not to shit himself, by seeing this. And he said it went up a little bit higher, and it started spinning faster and faster and faster, but it wasn't making any noise. He said, I couldn't hear anything at all necessarily.
Did Musk make that thing? Is it a Tesla? Did you see?
You know what it
Tesla
sounds like?
logo on it?
Do you know what it sounds like, Joe? Do you know what it sounds like off the top of my head listening to this? But you've got those spinning kind of rings. You could have counter-rotating Mercury at that point, like Nazi
See, that
Bell
sounds
stuff.
a lot like that, doesn't it?
Yep. So carry on, dude.
So it keeps spinning faster and faster and faster. I don't know how he could tell that it was spinning faster and faster and faster, but he told me that it was his feeling that it was spinning faster and faster and faster. And it got to a point where it just disappeared. He didn't see it anymore. It was right over them, and then it wasn't there. And then he said that they pointed, and they said, there it is, way over there. I don't know how far away that is, a mile, 2 miles, whatever. Too far for it to be normally. And then he said to me, turned to me, I'll never forget, he said, and that's when I thought they weren't going to let me walk out of there alive. And I was like, holy shit. And so that was his story about this thing. So he said that they called it the acorn. I had never heard that before. Now, looking back on it, or years later looking back on it, it has a lot of similarities to the Nazi bell.
Yep.
And they called that the acorn.
Well, you think of the shape, if you think of the shape of the Nazi
correct?
bell, I mean, it's not far off the acorn shape, right?
No. I mean, according to if you see there in the, in the images, it's sort of like an acorn. That could be it. Now, could this guy have been messing with me? Sure. Yeah, he could have been. He could have made the whole thing up.
Well, look at this, Charlie. Look at this. This here's got something called the Kecksburg acorn.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is a name for it.
And I've never heard anything about that thing spinning, but maybe it did, or maybe it does. I don't know. But all I know is his story. And for one, so like I said, you can sort of discount it or believe it or not believe it. It doesn't really make much of a difference. It's just a story. It's not a first person story. It's a second person story. But his reaction and his genuine nervousness and his uncomfortableness with being inside his own studio and being legitimately freaked out to talk to me about this, but he felt comfortable enough. And I guess maybe because I had been there, a couple of weeks earlier in the beginning and had heard him first talking about it, and to see how enthusiastic and how this would be awesome. This is cool. I can't wait to go see, I don't know what they've got in store for me, but I can't wait. And then to contrast that with when I came back, he was like, I can't talk, click, just hanging up on me. And then we got to go outside. And then he told the story, and he thought he wasn't going to live.
And this is a guy that's not into any of this, right? He's
a photographer.
Yeah, that's not his gig.
No connection to this at all. And it was the one thing, though. The one problem with the story is something I brought up in the beginning. He confirmed it in the beginning as well. And we never were able to reconcile this, is the fact that though he was or is, I don't know if he's still doing it, a good photographer. Clearly, if you're building these things, you don't have a guy that can operate a camera there. We all had a problem with that aspect of it.
You see, this takes me back to what Just a Guy was saying now. The PSYOP kind of the side of this, because, and I'm not saying this for 1 minute, but I mean, maybe from time to time you do get civilians that are exposed to some of this exotic technology, so that they'll go and tell the public. They expect them to go and tell their story. And again, so I could definitely see that sneaking in here, because like you say, dude, why on earth's name wouldn't they have their own photographer and things,
Right, exactly. It didn't make sense to us, and it could be, but for it, and it could be a psyop for sure. But my feeling is that they would have picked somebody with a bigger voice, and a broader audience. For him, what are the chances that they take this guy out there so that he'll tell one guy, me, and then 20 years later I write a book that has nothing to do with it, and then I happen to mention it on the internet. They're like, oh, our plan is working perfectly. That would be a hell of a you'd have to give them a ton of credit for setting up that big lie. But I think maybe it was more like, who cares if this guy goes out and tells everybody that he's ever met about this thing. Who's going to really believe him? Or, it could also be that it is just some technology that isn't alien or anything nefarious that we that we have, that they've been working on for a long, long time, and there's nothing really dark about it. But to us, the untrained, it would appear to be
Gone to the dogs,
fiction.
if you will. Yeah.
Gone to the dogs, for sure.
Here we have the result of a Nazi experiment gone wrong.
Gone bad.
Mhm.
Mengele meddled with my DNA.
Dude, you see this fancy camera software you've got? The dog's mouth doesn't even move with yours, man.
It's so fake.
It's poor. I mean, that's the worst deep fake I've ever seen.
You think it is?
I definitely did. I can tell that's
Can you make
you
yourself
right
a
away.
lizard though? Is there a lizard option there?
I
Because
don't
that
know
would
if we
be
have
awesome.
a lizard option.
Come back to us, Joe. I want to talk to you because you're the only dude here that's actually spent time in the U.S. Navy, and it would appear to me that the U.S. Navy are the ones, and I get it, okay? I get how compartmentalized things are, right? But
75% water, right? Is the Earth. So the Navy's got a lot of territory, and what a great place for privacy. If you have to do anything, you do it on the open ocean where nobody can see you, So yeah, I can understand why the Navy's involved and why they have a lot of those sightings, because they're really in more places to where you can, you see this stuff. They're more spread out, I guess you could say, and mobile. Not to mention the fact, think about this too, Kev, where if you've ever been out to sea, there's absolutely no light pollution at all. It is pitch black. You see things so much more clear in the sky than you do like over land. So that's why I can understand why a lot of these sightings and a lot of the experimentation that we do has the Navy involved. And then you look like at the work of Dr. Tom Bearden. Now, he was Air Force, and Air Force has a big role to play too in using a lot of that advanced technology. He was focused on scalar technology, which if you look at a lot of the history of that, you could tie that back to Area 51 experimentation and things like that.
that's the thing. It's not just like the alien stuff at Area 51 that fascinates me. It's the technology that they've been working on, the stuff that they've, like R&D type stuff that has come into the public years later. It must be amazing, some of the shit they're working on there.
Yeah, you often wonder if it's as freaky as what was it, like Independence Day? Was that the movie?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. If it's truly that like over the top or like Men in Black. But I wonder. I don't know. I don't know if it's that over the top. But I'm like 99.9% certain that they've got help. If in one way, shape, or form, either by reverse engineering or direct help, or both.
I mean, we joke about the whole bloodlines and the reptilian stuff, and I mean, we were even having a laugh and a joke, Charlie, about Merkel, how she's getting ready to shift. She's doing all that crazy shaking thing. But at the end of the day, we're only joking about that because, I mean, you start looking back in history and things, and it would appear that these royals, these elites, they do have a different bloodline. So then you have to start looking at where does that blood come from? And you could call it a demonic entity, you could call it an alien race. It's all the same thing. So absolutely there could be technology, there could be stuff there. Definitely conversations been had. Now, does that account for all of the unidentified things we see in the sky? Absolutely not. But if only one of those sightings is something that's otherworldly, like Bob Lazar says, the human race deserves to know about that. That's something we should all know about, Charlie.
I agree. I mean, they treat us like children, in part because, they don't think we can handle it, but also they're probably siphoning off this money illegally to use this to fund these projects. And if they're doing that, then of course, then they can't be forthright about it because then people would question their funding. But I I made that sort of crude connection to the Pilgrims, or Christopher Columbus discovering the New World, and if the Indians had found a rifle there that and they pulled the trigger and a bullet shot out and killed a horse 200 yards away, that technology to them would appear to be magic. Yeah. And they would have a decision to be made at that point. Do they share this technology with the rest of their tribe, or do they hold on to it for themselves and rule over not just their tribe, but everybody's tribe? And I feel like in the psychopathic mindset of some of the people like the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, and the people running the governmental agencies, in their heads, if they came across any of this technology, a new technology that would allow them to take control of the world rather than share it with the world, say something that would provide the world with clean, renewable technology forever, so you wouldn't have to have fossil fuels. You and I come across it, and we would probably be, because we're not, narcissistic lunatics trying to run the world, we would probably want our inclination be to share this technology to make the world a better place, whereas their mentality is to keep it secret. So if they did ever find anything in Area 51, or in Roswell or any of these other crash sites, if it's being run by the military, if the cleanup operations are being run by the military, then their default mindset is to keep it secret, hold on to it and retain it for themselves, figure out how it works, and then use it as a weapon to rule over everybody else. Whereas the rest of us would be like, let's use it to help humanity. They look at things differently. And because of that, we shouldn't expect for them to come right out and say, hey guys, look at this crazy stuff we found in this flying saucer. Like, we reversed engineered it and got fiber optic cable technology out of it. Isn't that great? We're going to share it with the world. Well, they do that in a sort of roundabout way. They hand that off to one of their favorite private companies, let them develop fiber optic technology, and then they've got shares in that company, and then they profit from it in that way. So this is sort of obfuscation of technology that has been reverse engineered by the government and then handed off to private industries has been going on for 70 years. So,
and I would imagine Area 51 now, guys, I look at it almost like the tourist attraction of the conspiracy world. I mean,
for sure.
Will there be really that much secret stuff going on there? I mean, you hear about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. You hear about all these deep underground military bases. I would imagine a lot of that stuff, it's been broken up, moved away. And again, Area 51, come and look at Area 51. It's like HARP up in Alaska. Happily talk about HARP. Happily look at HARP. Don't look at what we're doing over here with our new technology, though.
Yeah, but a lot of Area 51 stuff is underground, right?
Yeah.
So that's number one. And the airfield there is mostly for shuttling people to and from
the Janus flights, right?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, while there's testing and all that stuff that goes on, the majority of the work goes on underground. So, and you go to that perimeter, you breach that perimeter, they are out on you like white on rice, man.
Well, that's another part of his story, because when he first came out, he had got a look at the test flight schedule, and he knew it was happening on Wednesday nights or whatever, and he was taking groups of friends up there, Joe, to literally watch these craft perform maneuvers that we just ain't even capable of doing today. And of course, one of these times he got caught, the people were there, like, so the story goes that kind of the night vision binocular rolled out of the darkness to their feet, and then when they looked up and turned the lights on, there was like a SEAL team in front of them and things. So, I mean, there's other witnesses there that
just popped out to the garden for a smoke and saw what looked like two stars moving at a steady pace across the sky in parallel, the Cotswolds.
See? You see?
Oh, there you go. See, we get them everywhere.
How cool is that?
There are watchers.
There are, but you know, something you can see in the sky yourself, if you go and look at the kind of schedule for it, is the ISS. I remember going down to Bilderberg in 2013, and that was like...
Maybe we should tell Jeranism.
We could tell Jeranism, but he would just call it fake anyway. Space doesn't exist, the moon doesn't exist, all of this is bunkum. We're getting paid by NASA and Area 51 to do this show.
By the way, I watched Uni's video, the one he sent me.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, Uni rocks. He does. He really does. You flat earth man, Charlie? No?
No, but I respect their ability, or I respect their right to discuss it.
Exactly, and that takes me on to my
And
next.
not be just overtly laughed at. Like, of course, I'm sure they would agree that the first time you hear about it, it sounds laughable. But like I've said before, the one thing that, well, the one non-scientific thing
I
that
know you
makes
could try. You try to be nice. I know.
that makes me sort of, kind of, maybe believe a little bit of
Don't
it
do
is
it.
that the
Oh,
is
don't
that
go
the
with-
United Nations flag is that top-down version that's cut into 33 different sections, and it just sounds like something that they would do to throw it right in your face as the United Nations. I'm not saying that that's any sort of proof or anything remotely close to proof. I just thought it was interesting that they chose that as their flag, because
No.
I consider the United Nations to be just the epicenter of douchebaggery and scumbags and evil, despicable human beings. So it would be the type of thing that they would do to hide it in plain sight.
It's emoji. Joe's getting ready to lose the will to live here.
Goodness
But what I will
gracious,
say
I
is,
can't
right?
believe it.
No,
I had no idea Charlie was a closet flat earther.
No,
I'm not a closet flat earther.
No.
I just don't like the United Nations flag, and I think that the fact that their
It's like the
flag is a
dollar
flat
bill.
earth makes me very, very concerned about them.
Well, now that topic is one of the topics that is on here on YouTube. They're
Bam.
personally banning that. They're getting rid of that.
Yeah.
And that takes
Oh,
me
and
to
it's causing a hell of a I mean, what an infighting, just
yeah.
crapola festival that's going on in ye old flat earth realm.
It's grifter eat grifter out there, dude. It truly is. But
Eat or be eaten.
it takes me to a bigger kind of story, and you're right at the heart of this one, Charlie, because we see the censorship happening. It's getting worse by the week, and right now, I mean, we're getting visiting time with you, dude, right? Because you're doing some hard time, Zuckerberg time.
Attica. I've still got 19 more days left in my 30-day Facebook jail, which is totally ridiculous. But it does make me think about, when they're censoring things. I understand when they're censoring. I mean, I'm not all right with it, but I understand why they would be censoring, the left versus the right and this, some of these discussions. But it was weird to me that they were censoring flat Earth, because I would thought if it's so preposterous and so stupid, right, which most people think it is, then why would you need to censor it? In fact, by censoring it, you're somehow validating its importance by making it look like something that you aren't allowed to see. And you know how we are. If you're not allowed to see it, we want to see it.
They become like YouTube martyrs, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It does. It drives more people there in the end of the day. It's that Streisand effect.
Mm-hmm.
You tell somebody not to look at something.
They could just be trying to discredit people, or they could be like, let's take all these people that are talking about really important things, and then let's just throw flat Earth in there to screw up everything too.
I think that's the one subject.
That's exactly what it is.
I think that one subject, along with some of the dodgy stuff that's happening with kids and things on the platform, as an advertiser, if I was buying a lot of advertising space on YouTube videos, and I was spending a lot of money to get that kind of top level ads, you would be very careful about what your ad appears on. And there are some videos you would rather not have your ad appear on, because these same people will then say, look, they're endorsing the whatever message it is in that video.
Choose to associate their product with.
So I can see, and of course people call it censorship. I get that. But censorship would be if you can't make the videos at all. And you can still make the videos. You can still have your Flat Earth channel and things. It's just they've cut off that ability to make the money on it. And that's why we're seeing the implosion.
If I was an advertiser, I would want my product advertised on Flat Earth videos. And the reason would be because if these people believe the Earth is flat, they're certainly going to believe that my product will get your teeth whiter than somebody else's. Right, that would be my target market. I'd be all in Flat Earth.
I guess you're right.
Advertising.
Your ratio of clicks to purchases would probably be higher
Yeah, you'd be like,
Yeah,
if you
right.
believe the Earth's flat, you are definitely going to believe that this detergent I'm trying to sell you will
Buy
get your
my
clothes
snake
extra
oil.
white.
So what got you banned from Facebook, dude? What was it? I mean, did you like post pictures of cats getting strung up from trees, or?
Yeah, yeah. No, I got kicked off of Facebook for a post from almost 2 years ago. That was it.
Dang, the algorithm went back in time. What had you done?
I had posted a 5-minute video that I had made that's on YouTube. Just it was little excerpts from my book, and it was a little clip about Sandy Hook.
Ooh, that will do it. Yeah.
That'll do it.
And you can't say that, by the way.
No, you can't. No. We call that Sierra Hotel on here.
Yeah. Well, the Sierra Hotel topic.
Yeah,
was
Sierra
the video.
Hotel is
Yeah.
it. They've actually changed their guidelines on YouTube to specifically say you cannot say that events were that way.
Yeah. Because history is always 100% accurate, right? Like, I mean, it's such a joke. But I also will take that with that topic. If it's so preposterous that people think that it might have happened a different way, then why ban people? Same as flat Earth, right? If it's so stupid and it's so unbelievable,
because you give it legitimacy
by doing that, by saying you can't talk about that. You can't.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, if we look back at just the history of World War II, I mean, there's questions about a lot of that stuff, and they've made it so that if you ask questions about it, you're so, how dare you? Are you denying history? Yeah, actually, I am kind of denying history, because history has been full of baloney for so long. We know that. I mean, it's, as they say, history is written by the victors. That's a pretty accurate statement. And so, if you want to dig into history of World War II or World War I or Vietnam, you're going to find a lot of discrepancies.
It's all manipulated. Yeah, everything is manipulated and written based on the author's where he wants to take it. Basically, it's
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that we would dig into that. I think it's fun. I think you should want to try and find out what the truth is and dig into it. But when they put up a barrier and say, well, you can find out the truth about all these other things, but this one topic is off limits, then it's like, well, I definitely want to find out what's going on there. Because if you guys have gone to the trouble of setting up your algorithms to ban a particular topic from being discussed, then there must be something more to it than what the official story is. Because if the official story was just completely accurate, no questions asked, then A, nobody would be talking about it, and B, you wouldn't feel the need to ban it and prevent people from having that discussion. So because people are being prevented from looking into these topics, well, it just makes them more forbidden. And then, of course, if it's forbidden, then people want to seek them out even more. So they're actually doing a huge disservice. If they were smart about it, they'd just keep their mouth shut.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You look at history in general, and it's all cockapooey, the stuff they try to sell you. Case in point, look at how many people are deceived. We talk about Vietnam, Gulf of Tonkin.
Your radio show has been a huge inspiration in me doing my own show. And you have helped me along this journey of better understanding this crazy and mysterious world we live in.
Wow.
Oh, that deserves this. There we go.
Thank you very, very much, Beyond the Forbidden TV. That's
You're going to turn Joe into a dog pretty soon.
I hope so, man. I hope so. Joe likes to get his furry on, shall we say. Don't you, Joe? See, there he goes. So what did I miss, guys? What did I miss when I was gone?
What we're talking about is basically the manipulation of history. And where I was going with this is, you talked about every major war in the 20th century. Basically, you take a look at all of that, and you see how much it's been manipulated. You talk about Hitler went out and committed suicide, and then they burned his body in the back courtyard. Yeah, right. Okay. And it's yada yada yada. That's just the 20th century. But even go back further, and look at uh, ancient history, like the Great Pyramid. Definitely
Oh.
not the Egyptians. Had nothing to do with Egypt. Just hijacked. Their whole civilization was built upon these pyramids that they hijacked. It had nothing to do with Egypt at all. They did not bring the concept of a pyramid about.
Come on, Joe, look at that thing. You know that was built by people with like really
And then they were
crappy
like,
tools.
okay, you see that? They see that lion sitting right next to it. Oh, yo, we're gonna make it ours. Ching, 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 and that's what they did, man. And they made it a sphinx, but it wasn't theirs. They hijacked it. That's
And
why
then
everything they built, Charlie, was inferior.
they took over. Zahi Hawass is the information director for the Egyptologist, and he's turned that into a cottage industry of retaining that story and being extremely defensive of anybody that chips away at it, like Robert Schoch or Graham Hancock, or the people that come in and say we have big problems with the water erosion that's on the Sphinx. It couldn't have happened in this climate. It had to have happened from 5,000 years before when you're telling us it was. And that was when it was a rainier environment, and therefore your story doesn't hold water, and we're calling bullshit on it. Yeah, and then they fight to defend it because they have a vested interest in this history being their own, and of course, probably the Egyptian people have an interest in it. They grew up with it; they're protective of it. I certainly can understand that. The United States does that same sort of thing too. With we're all about freedom and democracy and stars and stripes, and man, you better love it or leave it. That's baloney. That is just a lie. It's a cultural lie that's been sold to us, and and I'm sure the Egyptians have the same sort of like, hey, they've grown up and these are our national treasures and they're located in our land. Well, okay, yes they are, but there's a little bit more to the history than that. Absolutely. And the British got involved with the museum, and maybe added things or took things out. So there's there's a ton of suppression of history, and I think all of us here, and maybe even everybody that's watching as well, we just want to know the truth, man. We don't care who's found it. We just want the truth because we're trying to make sense of this world that we live in that doesn't make any sense, and we think that if we can kind of piece things together, that then we'll be like, oh, now I get it.
It's the big questions, Jonah. Where did we come from? What are we doing here? And where are we going?
But if knowing that, right? Why is it so bad that we know? What are they trying to hide? And why are they manipulating people so badly? So there's Egypt. There's an instance of unbelievable manipulation. Look over in Jerusalem, right? How many millions of people visit that Wailing Wall and put their hopes and dreams and prayers in the cracks and pray and do all that kind of stuff, thinking that it's the Temple of Solomon, the Temple Mount, when it's Fortress Antonia. It's a Roman fortress, and they've been told that it's a Temple Mount, and it has nothing to do with the temple. It has. So anytime people do that, they're putting their prayers and their faith in Rome. Think about the power that's there and what Rome represented and what they're doing. It's an unbelievable deception. But history will tell you, you read Josephus, he tells you that the temple was destroyed, the mountain it sat on was raised, and the Roman emperor said, take that mountain and take it down to the land, and then go 2 feet below down to the bedrock, and then sow the land with salt so nothing will grow on it. Just teach those Jews a lesson about rebelling against Rome. Don't do it. And so nobody knows. People go and they think they walk the path that Jesus walked when he was carrying his cross and being crucified, the stations of the cross and all that. But what people don't tell you is that when Mount Zion in Jerusalem was raised, they changed the entire topography of Jerusalem. They filled in the Valley of the Cheesemongers, and it totally changed the landscape. Everything changed. So You may think you're walking that Stations of the Cross, but it had nothing to do with it, because in 70 AD, well after Jesus was crucified, they changed Jerusalem and all of its stuff. It's all about tourist attractions and money.
That would be a cool name for an ice hockey team, the Cheesemongers. I think that would be cracking, man. Cracking. The Valley of the Cheesemongers. But no, we're watching history being occulted and rewritten digitally before our eyes. We talk about things falling into the memory hole, Charlie. And I mean, how long before history as we remembered it, it's been totally sanitized. We've been given this kind of SJW version of things that went on.
Yeah. And I would say that Wailing Wall and is even more so on an energetic level is taking everybody's energy as well.
Yeah, right.
They're harvesting it for whatever,
Just
for
think
whatever
about
purposes.
the power there, Charlie. I mean, that's
the walking
crazy.
around the cube in Mecca, that power too, that emotional power, they're there. And I'm not trying to give anybody's religion a hard time. Believe whatever you want. It doesn't make any difference to me as long as you're not hurting other people. I don't really care. But
exactly.
But the fact that we talk about this a lot on this show. There is a spiritual energy. There is a form of that whether, if it's people in the shadows or if it's non-human entities, like to harvest that energy. And you see people in this swarm walking around that cube. And then, of course, we know about the black cube and the ties that has to Saturn worship and Satanism and things
how this
like that.
looks like the rings of Saturn when they're just
like the rings of Saturn going around, and they're going around and they're generating this heat and they're generating this energy and they're putting their mind's attention to it. And who knows? I mean, what we, obviously we can't see it with our own eyes, but who knows what sort of energetic field that is, or what, you don't know. I don't know if that's sitting on some ley line somewhere. I mean, these things might seem a bit airy-fairy to some people and go, oh yeah, whatever, man, take your crystals and go home. But there is some sort of truth. There is some sort of science behind that. I mean, there is energy. Just because we don't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. So, my feeling is that maybe that these people that are in control of history have changed. They've obviously changed history to their own benefit, to benefit their story, to justify their existence.
It's all in the word, Charlie. It's his story. It's his story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's always told by the victors.
That story could be changed. And what's funny is that if you these days try to change history, try to change recent history, like you said, the social justice warriors or the social media platforms will deplatform you for wanting to change history. And I would assume that all of us are of the opinion we're not looking to change history. We're just trying to get it right. Right. We just want to know what the truth is. Maybe the truth is always a bit subjective. I don't know. But nowadays, we don't even have to go back and try and change ancient history. Current history is being changed by, like you said, by being memory holed by YouTube and Google and Facebook and Amazon and all these companies that are. Amazon just deplatforms anything having to do with anti-vaccination. Well, that's a form of changing history, isn't it? I mean, you're just denying that even exists anymore. Taking, something on a much smaller level, deleting my tweet and putting me in, or deleting my Facebook post and putting me in Facebook jail for 30 days is on a smaller scale changing history.
I think that makes you even cooler. I mean, you were already cool to me, dude, but you're even cooler now, man.
Yeah, man.
You've got better.
Right. I stabbed a couple people in Facebook jail
too,
man. I don't even
digital
play, man.
cred.
I just shanked some guy. Like,
you don't have street cred. You've got digital cred, dude. You're the man. Cred. But I tell you, we talk about history changing and things like that, folks. And we're going to go into something now where literally history, things we remembered, they are changing. They have been for a long, long time. And Charlie sent me a video today that sent me right back down a rabbit hole that I tried to avoid for so long. But I go with patterns, and Joe, you'll remember, a couple of Freaky Fridays ago, a couple of streams ago, we started to get into the Mandela effects of New York, right? Strange things that didn't sound right, and we were trying to think, how did America get into World War I? And the Lusitania comes to mind, and then they were talking about the bombing of this island outside New York. Never even heard of this. Well, Charlie sent me a video today, and I must admit, this blew me away, because this doesn't come from just your typical YouTuber or somebody sitting trying to make sense of what's going on in the world.
Right.
This comes from the CEO of a company called NEC Sentry Software. Now, I've checked the company out. They seem legit. I'm just going to get the CEO's name here. His name is Chris Anatra. And what he is talking about, folks, what he feels compelled to address right now because of what's happening to his business and in his personal life, well, he put together this video here, and we're going to watch a bit of this, and we're going to kind of discuss it on the other side. I've reached out to Chris to see if he'll come on the show to discuss what we're about to hear in this clip. But folks, get ready, because this has to be, I think, one of the most important Mandela clips so far. Because, Joe, here's somebody talking about it from his business's point of view. Yeah.
I can't wait to see it, Kev.
Here we
Really.
go. I'll play out the first bit of it, and then we'll get to the bit where he explains what he thinks is going on. So
Yep,
take a listen to this, folks. We're going Mandela, full Mandela. Here we go.
Hi, my name's Christopher Anatra. I'm the president and founder of a computer software technology company called NECS Incorporated. NECS creates a specialized line of software called Entree, which was created for the specialized needs of the food distribution industry. A food distributor is someone that has a warehouse, they stock large quantities of food, they have a fleet of trucks, and they make deliveries to grocery stores and restaurants, etc. We've been doing this for over 25 years, so we have a lot of experience in this industry. We have over 2,000 clients that use our software, that depend on it for their day-to-day operations. I'm making this video for my clients to explain some possible causes for changes to their data and how it relates to quantum physics and a phenomena that's been called the Mandela effect. First off, what do I mean by changes to your data? Over the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a growing amount of NECS clients that have been calling in saying that the numbers on their reports and dashboards do not appear to be accurate. Now, this is something that causes NECS, our technical support department, to spend.
You hear that okay, guys?
Yeah.
There's
I
people,
can't believe I'm hearing this.
there's people in the chat room saying it needs turned up, but that's it cranked up as far as it'll go. So it does sound all right, yeah?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
A large amount of time and resources helping customers figure out what's going on and if the reports are accurate or not.
This video is not to make an excuse for a software bug or corrupted data in your Entree data tables. When the data is manually audited, including going back to hard copy invoices, etc., purchase orders, the data on reports and dashboards is proven to be accurate and correct. This issue causes hours and days, sometimes weeks, of wasted time for both NECS, technical support, and our clients. What is happening? I believe that NECS is the first technology company to come out in the open to expose what is happening that is causing sometimes critical, mostly unexplainable, deviations in your data. It's okay if after you're presented with this information, you are confused, you have more questions, or you even think that I, as the president and founder of a software company, am a little eccentric or out there. That's okay.
You know, I think you're absolutely brilliant, dude. I can't wait to get on my
you.
show.
Me
Okay.
too.
One thing I want to stress is that the entire staff at NECS, which is almost 40 employees, appreciates and cares about your business. We feel we have the best software without question for food distribution. My team of 10 programmers sincerely cares to provide the best software with some important new products that we're going to be releasing in 2020. My team of 11 technical support staff, they truly also care, and they want to ensure your experience with our software is the best
And of course, all your data is completely accurate. So let's begin. For example, you might look at a report or a dashboard and know from your memory if one of your customers purchases much more or less of a certain item than you expected. It would raise some red flags in your mind. Well, NECS client data is very specific to a specific NECS client. For example, if you regularly sold 10 cases of pepperoni to Joe's Pizza every month, another client in another state would have no idea about that. Instead, a really good way to illustrate that your data is changing has to do with your product descriptions, especially with descriptions of items that are common that we all know. What do I mean? Let's start with an example. The avocado. Many of my clients are produce distributors and they sell a lot of avocados. The most popular type of avocado is the, what's it called? HA blank S. What do you think? HA blank.
Okay, what do you think? Because I didn't know this one. This
I
is
don't
new
know
and me.
either.
Blank S. What goes
Not a
in the
big
blank?
avocado fan.
No.
Well, the answer is another S. H-A-S-S. Hass. Did you think it was Haas? H-A-A-S? Look it up.
I did
Google
think it was HAAS.
Mm-hmm.
The Haas avocado, H-A-A-S, has never existed. It has always been called Hass, H-A-S-S. The story of how these avocados were discovered has also changed. In the past, from my research, they were crossbred by a German botanist named Rudolf Haas, H-A-A-S. I specifically remember reading about his story. However, now, you can Wikipedia this, they were accidentally discovered growing in the backyard of a post office worker named Rudolf Haas. Now, if you thought it was actually Haas, that's okay. There's actually no wrong answers.
See, that's what I like about him as well here. This is something we've always said, Joe, when it comes to these things, because you'll get people throwing their hands up in the air and going, oh, you're mad. Your memory's gone. I don't remember things like that. And that's cool.
Right.
That's cool. I'm not saying you have to remember things anyway. I'm telling you my experience. And these things are
this
so
is great.
personal, you know? Right, I'll get forward to the bit where he's actually going to talk about what he thinks is going on. Hang on now. Try and find it. This is quite interesting, this bit here, actually.
Have been noting, most especially as it affects our bottom line and requires more technical support resources. Now there's a whole other list of these things. I'm just going to name off of some changes that might sound familiar to you. Fruit Loops cereal. Fruit Loops was always spelled F-R-U-I-T. Now it's spelled F-R-O-O-T. And it's always been that way since 1963, which is really interesting because I always used to say that unless sugar is a fruit, someone's going to be sued. And I guess their attorneys must have heard me in another timeline or something. And now it's F-R-O-O-T. Another one is Cup of Noodle soup is now called Cup Noodles. And it's been that way since 1971. Scotch Guard products are replaced with G-A-R-D
That doesn't even look right.
No.
instead of G-U-A-R-D. It's been that way since 1952. It just doesn't look right. Brussels sprouts are now Brussels sprouts.
What?
No.
No, they're not. No.
Never.
Say that
Never.
10 times fast. I don't think I can. Van de Kamp's pork and beans is now Van Camp pork and beans. It's been
Yeah,
that way
right.
since
It's
the
never been.
1880s. Whiteout that they used to use on the typewriters in the old-fashioned days is now spelled W-I-T-E.
No.
Why would you even do that?
Why would you even do that?
It's been that way since 1956. Liquid plumber. Instead of plumber being spelled like plumber, it's P-L-U-M-R. And it's been that way since 1969. And for those of my clients that service the nursing home industry, Depends adult diapers is replaced with Depend adult
Depend?
diapers. It went from Depends to Depend. That doesn't make any sense. What is going on? Quantum physics states that there are an infinite amount of parallel universes and that the nature of our universe and all others in the multiverse is that they are holographic. As a reference, you can read a book called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, which is all about
This boy is on it. This boy is
Boy,
on it. And if
he
you
is.
haven't checked out Michael Talbot or any of his work, I've not read the book, but I've certainly checked out a lot to do with it. You've got to get into that kind of stuff. But anyway, we'll go back to him.
quantum physics. It came out in the 90s. It's a de facto standard about this subject.
Others in the mainstream world have been noting these types of changes and have coined the phrase the Mandela effect to describe what's happening. What is the Mandela effect? It was named after Nelson Mandela. In 2009, there were over 10,000 people on an internet site called Reddit that acknowledged a distinct memory of him dying in prison in the late 1990s. There were riots in the street. In fact, I remember seeing the headline newspapers of people rioting in South Africa. However, he did not actually die until December 5th, 2013. What's going on? Other popular Mandela effects include the JFK assassination. For example, I always remember there being 4 people in the car: the driver, the Secret Service person in the front, JFK and Jackie O in the back. Now there's 6 people in the car.
See, they were always 6 people in the car for me, because that dude there always got hit by a magic bullet, came through, didn't it? You know what I'm saying? Unless it was 4 for you guys. Again, there's no right or wrong.
I don't
I only
remember
remember
6
4.
on that.
Remember 4.
But I don't remember Mandela dying in the 80s or
No,
in the
I don't
90s
remember that either. I don't
So-
remember that one.
The car looks different, and it's the governor of Texas and his wife are in the car, and the governor of Texas gets shot in the leg, and all these things happen. at
Yeah,
different
I don't
angles. All
remember
these
there
things
being a
happen
middle
differently
seat.
in the Zapruder film. The Berenstein Bear children books have changed. They used
Okay,
to be
we've
called
had that one.
Berenstein Bear. Slightly to the left, so you put your hand over your heart, and that's where your heart was. But now your heart is actually in the exact center of your chest. There have been new animals that have crept into the vernacular that are common that I have never seen before. Even the location of continents on our planet has changed. I remember the time when South America used to be under North America, not pushed way out towards Africa, which doesn't make any sense. How come they didn't discover South America first? Because it's maybe a 2-day boat ride. I don't know. Well, if you research this or ask an official source, such as Wikipedia, the Mandela effect means you are having a confabulation, or it is a mass misremembering of an event. A confabulation is a false or distorted memory. So if you clearly remember Stouffer's stovetop stuffing, you are having a false, distorted memory. Really? If millions of other people all share the memory of a product called Stouffer's stovetop stuffing, and don't forget that there are 60 million boxes of this sold every year, so
It's a
there are
lot of
people out there
stuffing.
that remember it this way. You're all having a mass misremembering of something that never existed? What? In the world of quantum physics, everything is data. Even our DNA is software. It's source code, and it's data which contains the blueprint of who we are. It's really quantum physics at work. What is a quantum computer? I find them extremely fascinating. A company called D-Wave out of Vancouver, Canada, has created and sells the world's most...
Don't blame Geordie. Come on, I'm going to have to go to Geordie now and say, hey, dude, my bad.
Mandela effect before Mandela. #woo.
Was there a Mandela effect before Mandela? Now, I'm not sure if anyone had started talking about them before the Mandela one, but there are ones that, like I was saying, there's something that's allegedly happened back in 1916 where an island off New York got attacked. It was a weapons depot, and that's the reason the Americans started to get involved in World War One. Now, that didn't come to light until recently, so it's arguable. Depends what kind of perspective you're looking at. Is there stuff before Mandela? Yeah, but we never really caught on till after this was a phenomenon that had been labelled Mandela. And it's a lady called Fiona Broome who initially coined that term.
Most advanced quantum computer. It can solve problems faster that all the computer technology combined currently existing on this planet can't. And you can visit their site for more information. The president of D-Wave has stated publicly and in large technology gatherings that the way they work is by exploiting the resources of parallel universes. The number of parallel universes it can exploit is measured in something called qubits or quantum bits. This is important to note because it lays the groundwork to begin to understand what is happening. It's all related to quantum physics and parallel universes. This is science. This is math. Now, I bet you never thought you'd see me doing a video like this. So just as Stouffer's stovetop stuffing never existed in our reality, or something else like Haas avocados changing to Haas in our universe or timeline or whatever you want to call it, such is the same with your specific entree data. NECS is going to continue to help you verify all your report and dashboard information. Don't worry about that. We're going to be here for you. But it's important that you at least be aware of this as a very real possibility. I say trust yourself. Trust your memory.
We'll pause that there, right? And I'll show you the actual YouTube channel here. And we'll look at the videos. Because, I mean, I was thinking to myself, is this a spoof? Have they made this up? Is it something to go viral? But unless they've been setting this LARP up for over 6 years, when this guy and this company start talking about their business model and what they do, their distributors, then this has been a LARP a long, long time in the making. In fact, I would hazard... This, for me, really tells me that they're a genuine company, and this is a genuine dude. That this Christopher guy, Chris, get his name again before I butcher it. Where are we now? Chris Anatra. He's somebody that's genuinely puzzled by this, and I think that's why he's addressed it, and I think that's why, I don't know, I mean, it just seems more important to me when you see companies coming out and addressing these things, guys.
I think it's very important, but I've never heard anybody explain it so well and use good industry examples. You're not just talking about like Berenstein. You're talking about customer databases and things. You're talking about numbers and data being manipulated to the point where you have almost like a measurable type of data set that shows like, okay, we've had an increase in say like 10 hours of tech support time, like increase since they started this, quantum computing and all that. We've got about a 10-hour increase on average because of manipulation of the data sets. That's crazy if you can start measuring that, and actually have some data to back that up. And so you got a guy that it's really kind of going out on a ledge, to be honest with you, because
big time.
Yeah, you could really be framed as a kind of
Bob Lazar.
crazy.
You could get the kind of
Bob
stigma
Lazar,
Bob Lazar's had. But I'm going to pull up this picture here, Charlie. And this is something myself and Anthony Patch used to talk about all the time. And somebody was asking about CERN in the chat room. And I mean, CERN's been around since the 50s, might even have been the 40s. And it's had various tasks and roles over the years. And obviously now it's infamous for the Large Hadron Collider. But this cat here, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's one of the main researchers, scientists on the ALICE project at CERN. And ALICE is one of the detectors. Now, here, he's wearing something saying Bond 1 and Mandela 0. Now, it makes no real sense. You're wondering to yourself, what's this cat trying to say? Is he trying to say something about Mandela effects? And when you start to dig down into the science and the maths of this, and I don't take any credit for this. This is Anthony Patch's stuff. He kind of taught me all this stuff, Charlie. But when you're doing optimization on a D-Wave computer, and bear in mind they use the D-Wave now to go over all of the information that comes from CERN, they use something called Monte Carlo, is it combinatorial math? It's a Monte Carlo is the name.
I just remember Monte Carlo math.
Yeah, Monte Carlo math. And of course, Monte Carlo, you've got Bond, the James Bond connection to Monte Carlo and things like that. And our hypothesis was that this guy was basically saying, we're having an effect here. We're doing something. Now, does that prove that CERN and the D-Wave are responsible for the Mandela effect? I don't think it's proof enough. It's certainly circumstantial that they could be having an effect. The fact that CERN and D-Wave have both talked in the past about creating portals into worlds that are just like our own, except they don't have the D-Wave, or the other Charlie's got hair and stuff like that, So I mean,
Yeah.
again, there's a lot of circumstantial evidence out there that you can tie CERN and D-Wave to this. But do I have a smoking gun per se? No, I don't. And I have to admit, I spoke to Geordie Rose, and as much as people hate me saying this, I didn't get a bad vibe off the guy. I really didn't. Now, that's not to say that he couldn't have been lying to me. He might have been pulling the wool over my eyes. But even, if it turns out that that machine and CERN are doing something to reality, again, I don't think Geordie Rose invented it with that intention. And you have to remember, he left there a long time ago now, and he's moved on to Sanctuary AI. And again, people say, oh, you're giving Geordie Rose an easy time. I spoke to the guy, and I'm not going to lie to you, I thought he was all right. I geeked out with him. So, I don't know, dude, but that's why there's so much kind of attention when it comes to Mandela. People looking at CERN and the D-Wave, What do you guys think? Because that's just my take on it.
Well, when they use the term Monte Carlo math, it makes me think of casinos and game theory.
Yep.
It makes me think of them manipulating the outcomes and the odds to put things in their favor. So using that term, if you could pick whatever term you wanted to, but to use the term Monte Carlo, definitely there aren't many associations with Monte Carlo, except there's a lot of rich people there. It's a tax haven, and it is known for their casinos. And what are casinos known for? They're known for being great for people that understand the odds and statistics, and really bad for people that are bad at math. Right? They can lose their ass because they're walking into a game that's rigged. So, I mean, you've got that guy sitting in the room. He looks every bit the part of a mad scientist with papers everywhere, and he's holding up a sign that has Mandela in it, and he works at CERN, and then you start to have Mandela effects. Of course, people are going to find some issues with that picture, and maybe, make some assumptions. I would. I mean, it seems like
here's the other side of that as well. Here's the flip side, because if I was working at somewhere like CERN and I seen all of the shtick that was going around the internet, yeah, you better believe I would try and play into some of that and get a conspiracy or two started. Hang on, if I just wear this thing with Mandela on, it's going to feed into what these people, their confirmation bias, they're going to love it anyway.
Oh, I would hold up some fake Super Bowl score for two teams that haven't played before, and just the internet would just implode, right? They'd be down at Caesar's Palace making crazy bets on, you put the Carolina Panthers win the Super Bowl, and you hold that up, and you're some guy that works at CERN. Oh my God, could you imagine every degenerate gambler would be betting their life savings on the Panthers? It's 75-1 odds to win it all. But this is what you get when you have geeky scientists trying to have some fun with people. I don't know. I mean, maybe, I've heard people say with the Mandela effect that what it means is that we're all dead and we just didn't realize it yet.
Yeah.
So maybe there's that. Maybe we have that to look forward to.
Well,
Maybe
because
we
it's already happened. It's already happened. That's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're born, we live, and we die all at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're already in a severe disadvantage trying to understand the concept of time. And you take time that we don't fully understand, but we think we do, because to us it seems sequential, and we start as a baby and we end as an old man, if we're lucky. And, you get older and everything seems very linear, but then the scientists will say, if you pick that apart, that it's really not. And if you've ever done ayahuasca or DMT or mushrooms or something, you understand that the way that you perceive time can be changed for sure. So there's a lot more to the science.
Time's weird.
Really
I'm watching that show Dark right now on Netflix, and it deals with time. And the guy in that, there's somebody in that, and it's such a head-scratching program. It's brilliant. But he was saying there's only the now. Because even the past, it happened at a time when it was the now. The future, we think about it now, we can project into the future, but when the future comes, we'll then be in the now. And the only time that exists is now.
Now.
Whether we think forwards or backwards, we're still doing it from the now position.
I've got a great book to recommend to people. It's a very thin book. It's not a big one, and it's kind of hard to find. But if you can find it, you could probably find it online. Get it. It's called A Happy Pocket Full of Money. It's written by a guy named David Cameron Gilkandi. He's not the David Cameron. He's an African guy from Kenya. It is, yeah, but it'll blow your mind. But there are parts in there that talk about that. It is almost that exact same phraseology that you just used. We think about the past now. We think about the future now. There's only that when we get to the future, it will be in the now.
Yeah.
So it talks about that. It's a really great book. I highly recommend people find it. But yeah, there's a lot more to this than we know. Then when you throw in CERN and you throw in D-Wave and you throw in the fact that there's funding coming to D-Wave through DARPA, we know they're up to no good. I mean, you just have the epicenter of potential evil all coming together for this project at CERN. And I'm like you, I didn't get a bad vibe from Jordy Rose. He seemed to be pretty straightforward and upfront, and maybe that is the reason why he's no longer at D-Wave. I don't know.
And he was a good laugh off air. He was really a good laugh off air. He was cracking jokes. He was saying, when we come back from the break, I'll start speaking in tongues and things because people expect that from me. Right. He was just having a laugh with it. But, before we wrap up here, I mean, we talk about programming. And there's such a plethora of programs to choose from, where you've got the particle accelerator that's featured there, be it CERN, be it the Brookhaven Labs, the RIC. And then you have the particle accelerator and D-Wave in Continuum tied to time travel, stuff like that. Now, are we being programmed? Are they trying to tell us something kind of covertly? And the reason I say that is because Stranger Things 3 starts on July the 4th.
Oh, boy,
and of course, Stranger Things 3 tackles a lot of the stuff we've been talking about here. Multiple dimensions. You've got the Department of Energy with a particle accelerator and a quantum computer that are accessing these dimensions. And that's me talking about the real world, because we've seen the Chelsea Handler clip where that guy Ernst, the Department of Energy chief, talks about the fact that, well, actually, we do work in other dimensions. So this stuff is very real,
Absolutely, it sure is. And interestingly enough, you look at, say, for example, the Department of Energy. That's how the government typically hides things in plain sight. Is you wouldn't think that type of experimentation would fall under the Department of Energy, but it does. Just like the chemtrail program is managed under the Department of Energy, not the Air Force or anything else. So the Department of Energy handles so much more than just nuclear energy and the nuclear program, so yeah, crazy stuff.
You can't talk about that on here, Joe, because that's also where Q clearance comes from, the Department of Energy. Yes. Hey,
no,
hey, we don't go that letter of the alphabet on the show. But Charlie,
right.
Charlie, my friend, it has been absolutely fantastic having you here.
Pleasure.
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
And
it's been a great way to spend a Saturday evening.
Next time we'll need to get a 6-pack and we'll have some beers when we do it, and we can really get rowdy, man. And
yeah.
How long's your wife away for? We'll steal you again.
Couple more weeks.
Ah, nice.
So I'd love to jump back on it.
I think
a spare seat.
In response to Zuckerberg kind of giving you a kick in the nuts, I think we should step up to the plate, and we will give the man who shall not be named, Charlie Robinson, a platform to speak on, because you're obviously dangerous, dude.
Gotta do something. Gotta vent somehow.
They can't silence me.
That's right.
You see, this is what happens.
Silenced.
You see, this is what happens when you hang around with me, dude. They can't get to me because shit just bounces off me, so they go after my friends. That's what it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
I got another book that people might be interested to read. It's called Camelio. Came out by a guy named Robert Guffey. And you want to talk about some far out woo Department of Defense, Navy, working together with SAIC to build this technology that makes people invisible, that had invisible suits. It is the craziest book I have ever read in my life, without a doubt.
They developed it
Yes.
They developed it about 2008. The light bending fabric.
Joe,
Yeah,
Joe,
it's-
remember you have to pixel your face out when you talk about this stuff. What have we said before?
yeah,
I've told you about this before, dude. When you're going to spill the beans like this, you need to, like, do your thing. You know, you have to do the Project Veritas.
Forgetting
And,
about that. Yeah, because
speaking
you
a really
can't-
dark voice and trying,
to-
you know.
you have to really, really, really be careful when you talk about this stuff. So let's just let's
he
make
goes.
that happen. Just give me 1 second. 1 second while
Yeah.
I
You see, there he
Don't-
goes. Look, there he goes.
There-
There we go. See, forget Project Veritas. Come to the Kev Baker show. So then,
But-
my super secret whistleblower from the government. What's happening this week, dude?
Yeah, so we are working on this new world order technology that that Trump is going to use against something somewhere.
And is it true? Is it true that like Trump's weaponizing blue chickens?
Absolutely, he's
Oh,
putting them
man.
on catapults from the roof of the White House.
Oh, dang,
then,
dude.
then he's triggering veterans at the hospital to come out and light themselves on fire on the National Mall as a smokescreen, if you will, for all of his antics.
You see, folks. You see that there is a Joe proof. You see, Charlie. We've been saying this for years. Look, you know.
Is it true that they have had their partners at Merck develop a blue chickenpox vaccine?
Yeah, right. Blue chicken pox.
That's the rumor out there.
Maybe
I don't know if
that's
it's
Corey
true.
Good's long game, man. Maybe he's working for like one of these big pharma companies, and all of a sudden we're gonna come out in blue polka dots one day, and Corey Good will be stood there with Wilcock with a syringe. Trust us. Mass arrest
trust-
tomorrow. Just
yeah.
roll up your sleeve. Trust the scam, Charlie. Trust the scam.
Trust the feathers. Don't fear the feathers.
Exactly, dude. Well, you know, enough joviality from us three amigos tonight. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. It's been absolutely fantastic. It's been a lively chat room today. I see a lot of people having lively things to say. And that's what it's all about, because if me, Charlie, and Joe can get a conversation going, and even better, if we can get under your collar and get you a bit angry, a bit agitated to the point where we can shift you out of your usual position, look at something from a different perspective, get a new perception, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got an entirely different reality around you. And we can't tell you what to think. We wouldn't dare do that. We can only ask you to consider what we provide, and you can decide. So we'll be back tomorrow with Scotty Lopez, I hope. Charlie, hopefully next week or whenever we can rope him into some deep woo. And it'll be same time, same place tomorrow, right here. And don't forget, check me out on Monday on the Kev Baker Show. We're going to have a space week on KBS next week. We've got Dr. David Warmflash. And that's a real name, Charlie, before you laugh. Dr. David
it's great.
Warmflash. Not
That's
a
my
porn
porn
star.
name.
Yeah, I was going to
love it.
say,
See?
I know, but he is coming on to talk all about the moon. And I imagine we'll probably get a bit of stick for that show because he's worked with NASA in the past. Me, I can't wait to geek out with the guy, but hopefully as well, by the end of next week, I've reached out to that dude that's speaking about Mandela effect.
You're going to get him, man. I got a feeling. You're going to get him. You're going to break this whole story wide open.
I baited him in with the Geordie Rose. Bait him in, you know.
Mhm.
So hopefully we'll be able to get to that. But folks, want to thank you all for tuning in today. It's been awesome. We'll be back same time, same place tomorrow, unless we get caught up in the censorship purge. Until next time, goodbye.